Hello, I'm Michelle Dortnack from Unnata Aerial Yoga. Today, let's take a look at Plow Pose, an in-depth look. What it is, how to do it with the hammock, why use a hammock, and maybe also how it helps us in our regular day-to-day life. So, Plow Pose, otherwise known as Halasana. Let's take a look at it on the floor so that you know what we're comparing it to in the first place. Plow Pose is an inversion of a sort. You lie down on your back, you lift the hips up and throw the legs basically over the head to the floor behind you. Not everyone can get the feet to the floor, and that's perfectly fine. The hips are up, you put your hands on your back to wherever they go, the lower back or the middle back or maybe even the rib cage. You can straighten the legs out or keep them bent. That will depend a little bit on your flexibility. Now, what am I trying to do with this plow pose? Like what is its purpose on the floor? I'm getting a stretch for the middle to upper back, and the more flexible that I get, I'm also actually even trying to lengthen out the spine. Plus, it's an inversion, which has its own benefits. Okay, so now let's take a look at how to do this in the hammock, and I'll show you some details of how I practice it actually a little bit differently than mostly what you see on the internet. So first of all, I'm going to come to sit down in the hammock and lie down in the hammock, kind of similar to how you start out Plow Pose on the floor. And I'm going to scoot myself in the hammock so far back that look at this edge I'm holding over my head. I barely have enough hammock edge for my head. And that's because I'm actually going to have my head on the outside, and I want to curl that edge over the tops of the shoulders. The thing is, I don't really want a lot of fabric over the tops of the shoulders because the bulk of it is uncomfortable, but I obviously want to have enough because this is the only thing that's holding me in the hammock when I start to flip upside down. So I want to make sure I want to make sure that I have more than just like a few threads over the tops of the shoulders. I want to make sure that I can actually bring it across and sort of cover and touch itself on the other side of my neck and even maybe touch the other shoulder. So that's the over the shoulders. Now, down by the legs, all I have to do is take one foot outside of the hammock and sort of pull that edge into the fabric so it sort of folds over a little bit and slide my feet underneath it so that the hammock comes up and over the tops of the legs. The feet, the shins, maybe even all the way up to the knees, although that might depend on your leg length. Now, here's where I do something slightly different from what I see around on the internet. Most often what I see is at this point, to help get your legs up and over and out, and on the other side of the hammock, people just hold on to the edges. Well, that might be fine, and that would be fine for one way to practice Plow Pose. But I'm also going to add on a little extra detail, which is going to make this hold a little bit dangerous to do. So I'm going to hold a different way. Instead of taking my hands outside the hammock and holding onto the edges from there, I'm going to keep the hands in between the two sides of the hammock, so inside. And then I turn the palms to sort of face my face like so I can poke the fingers or the thumbs into the hammock walls and then curl the edges around my hands that way. So you either have to use the thumb or the fingers, kind of doesn't matter which way you do it. Me, I personally find it a little more comfortable to use the thumbs. Once I've done that and I twist now the wrist to face the feet, now the whole arm stays covered. If I just held here, some of my arm gets exposed. I want to have the whole arm covered. Okay, so now let's go into the Plow Pose. I take the feet through the center, make sure the fabric stays over the tops of the feet so that when I flip upside down, I have basically my artificial floor. Now, this is what you see frequently. This is almost exactly what we're getting on the ground when we practice Plow Pose there, only I'm not having to bend my neck. That's one of the pluses for doing it in the hammock. Now, if I keep my knees in close to my collarbones and I allow my spine to really round, then I might be getting a stretch there for the middle to lower back. Because my head is not being sort of forced to tuck the chin in towards the throat, I might not be getting as much of a curve as I would normally if I was doing this on the floor. Now, this is one way to do it, and it is nice to have like this type of a stretch, but I'm going to show you one other way and a few reasons why to do it a different way. Now, at this point, this is why it's important to keep both arms covered, is I'm going to actually try to curve the spine the opposite way of what I'm doing right now. And that means I'm going to look down towards the floor and back towards the top of my mat, towards the opposite wall, all the while keeping my hips in between the arms and maybe even trying to pull the tail and the lower back in the same direction that I'm looking with my eyes, right? So it's turning this from what would have been a forward bend or a stretch from the back into a backward bend. So I'm very active in the back muscles. It's like the opposite. Now, at this point, I may be able to straighten my legs out. I may not. Doesn't really matter. It's not about the flexibility of the hamstrings. It's really about what are we doing in our back and what is this doing for our breath. I can pass through the back stretch again as I roll back down to come out of it, and I'll come up to sit so I can show you a little bit better, like why would I want to do it that way? What am I getting out of it? Yeah? So, if I just take a hammock edge here and sort of drape it over me like a cape, you'll be able to see a little bit better what that action was when I was upside down. So, got my fingers here holding onto the edge to keep it in place. Okay, so the rounded spine, yeah, can give you a stretch for your middle to upper back, but because the head is not coming with you, it's sort of just dangling straight down, you probably won't be getting as much of a stretch that you might actually need to really have it be effective for you. So by going the other way, I'm not stretching the back, but what I am doing is by looking up and by trying to curve the spine the other way, I'm actually helping to broaden the collarbones and get a little bit more breath into the lungs and into the ribs up a little bit higher. What I'm doing is I'm activating or strengthening those back muscles to sort of combat this that we tend to do during the course of our days, this sort of slumping position. It's like a favorite position of our bodies to do in certain situations and also just over time. So it's many times what we do in a yoga class is we actually try to combat that, partly for good posture, which would just benefit your overall spinal health over time especially, but also partly so that you can breathe more fully and completely. Now here's the funny thing. On the floor, even though the chin is tucked, and it can be a stretch for in here, we are trying to strengthen those muscles, like trying to lift up the tail and trying to lengthen through the spine. So it's the same muscles that you would use in this other version of Plow Pose that I showed in the hammock, of trying to curve and look back. It's nice to be able to do both, right? So you can do both, just so that you can get a balance. Just remember, if you're going to do the back bend version, you want to make sure you wrap those arms 100%, not just partly, because by doing that backward bend, you actually have to use your arms pressing against the hammock quite strongly, yeah, so that you keep your balance, basically. And also you need to have that leverage of something to push against so that you can get into this kind of a curvature. So that was our Plow Pose in depth. Hope you learned a few things and that you enjoy practicing. Once again, I'm Michelle Dortinack from Unnata Aerial Yoga. See you next time.